Somewhere deep within the British countryside lays an ancient decrepit husk of a once proud chapel, the Green Chapel. With time, the stone withers and crumbles and the moss works its way up these long forgotten walls. As the roof fades, the soft hue of the English sun finds its way into the ruin, silhouetting a lone, unmoving figure, the eponymous Green Knight. Is it waiting, sleeping, dormant, or has it reverted into a lifeless wooden statue still standing tall? After a mystical odyssey across unknown lands, both cursed and enchanted, our protagonist Sir Gawain arrives at this Green Chapel, arriving 1 year hence since he beheaded the mysterious Green Knight. After their initial showdown, the otherworldly figure promised to return the same blow Gawain inflicted upon him a year later, a death sentence for the mortal. As Gawain approaches the Green Knight, mindful of the entire quest that brought him here, the traitorous scavenger, the ethereal spirit of the headless St. Winifred, the psychedelic giants that look down upon him like a man would an ant, he's here to find answers to the question posed along the way. Is Gawain still prepared to fulfill his promise and confront the death head-on, becoming an honourable knight embodying chivalry and valour, but also losing his head? Or will he reject his archaic code and choose to live? The Green Knight is a film with more questions than answers. Much like Apocalypse Now, our protagonists encounter numerous obstacles, threats, or seemingly friendly faces as they stray further into unknown territory. As they march away from their starting point, they seem to gradually enter a world that plays by its own rules. Perhaps these are the rules of nature. As they stray further from civilization and a world moulded by the rules of men, they enter a world moulded by the rules of nature. Nature runs through the heart of the Green Knight. The idyllic Irish countryside is captured with a crisp authenticity by Andrew Palermo's camera. Even the film's namesake, the Green Knight, seems to be on some level the personification of nature. When he rests his axe at the initial confrontation at King Arthur's court, vegetation blooms atop the stone floor it lays on. However, it's soon wrapped in rags and hidden away, suppressing the spread of these cursed weeds into the noble court. Is the Green Knight a story about man's struggle against nature? Does Gawain's quest work to ridicule man's knightly laws of honour, highlighting the futility of Gawain's promise to return 1 year hence? What good does his mission bring to himself or his kingdom? The montage upon the film's finale, showing Gawain being crowned king, birthing a bastard child, abandoning his lowborn love in favour of a princess, only to die old and miserable amidst his stone-cold throne room. Dev Patel's frown certainly suggests that this fate is an unsatisfactory one. If he goes on to live his life in accordance with man's laws, he will die powerless, surrounded by a family he doesn't truly love. Or is this haunted fate a result of his lack of valour? In forfeiting the Green Knight's challenge, does he admit to himself that he lacks these knightly qualities? Does his forfeit haunt his subconscious for years to come, convincing himself of his cowardice and that all his subsequent achievements are based on a lie? These are just some of the many questions that arise while watching the film. It's ambiguous in its nature. Every encounter has that indescribable quality of a deeper meaning hidden below the surface. What do the giants that Gawain encounters represent? Is the talking fox a metaphor for a wider message or idea? When Gawain reaches the Green Chapel, both himself and the audience are hoping to find answers to these questions that arose along the way, but the Green Knight offers little explanation, instead quickly getting down to business and chopping heads. Throughout the film, there are certain qualities that people expect from a knight. Although these are never truly crystallised into a neat list, these are what are called the 5 knightly virtues. While never spelled out in the film, the story it's based off, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, describes these 5 knightly virtues as friendship, generosity, chastity, courtesy, and piety. We can see instances where Gawain is tested in these areas throughout the film. His generosity is tested when the scavenger asks him for some money towards the start of the film, his courtesy when he tries to touch the ghost of St. Winifred. It's these qualities that Gawain is measured against and must live up to in order to cement himself as an honourable and become a knight. It's these knightly virtues that dominated British medieval society and are established in the film's opening. King Arthur's court at Christmas is full of honourable legends, all with their own tales of valour. Gawain, being of noble blood, wants nothing more than to cement himself within this structure. When asked to tell his story, he tells the king, with regret, that he has no story to tell. Is this what motivates Gawain to embark on what some may call an honourable, others may call it foolish quest to prove himself in the eyes of his king, and take his place among the legends that dominate the court? Numerous times throughout the film, Gawain is reminded of his lack of chivalry, failing to live up to the ideals he is striving towards. Perhaps upon completion of his quest, Gawain will find honour within himself and finally be able to embody the knight he wishes to be. During his encounter with the spirit of St. Winifred, he reaches out to touch her, only for the ethereal figure to scold him. A knight should know better. Do the failures to live up to these knightly qualities give Gawain even more determination to complete his quest? However, towards the end of his journey, he seems to have more apprehension when it comes to contemporary ideas of honour. Speaking to Joel Edgerton's character at his countryside manor, Gawain expresses doubts over the man he will become upon the completion of his quest. Have his previous encounters cast a shadow over his worldview, planting the seed of discontent in the system that would come to dominate his would-be life? Or has Gawain lost confidence in his ability to live up to the expectations of him because of this system? Essentially, does Gawain doubt himself, or does he doubt the knightly virtues? Much like Willard in Apocalypse Now, the Gawain that arrives at the Green Chapel is very different to the Gawain that first embarked on his quest. Although Willard's mental state is already fragmented at his starting point, Gawain is headstrong, determined to complete his mission and return a knight, basking in all the honour and glory that comes with his prestigious title. Although come the film's finale, we know, despite his knighthood, Gawain would live a frown-filled life as he goes grey in a loveless marriage in a failing kingdom. It's through his encounters that Gawain begins to doubt the system that forms the root of his worldview. This root is not severed in one decisive blow, but gradually chipped away at. First by the thieving scavenger. Shortly into his quest, the same day that he sets out I believe, Gawain is double-crossed by Barry Keoghan's lone scavenger. After not paying him enough for directions, this scavenger and his gang of thugs steal all of Gawain's possessions, leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back and the Green Knight's axe. Despite being a highborn noble and the scavenger being mindful of this, he still betrays him, claiming that Gawain did not give him enough money for his directions. Again, this event casts doubt over Gawain's mission. Has he failed to live up to the generous qualities expected of a knight by not granting enough money, or does it provide our hero with a new perspective? Up until now, he's likely lived his entire life within the walls of the city, where everyone respects his social hierarchy and treats him with respect due to his noble blood. But once outside these walls, Gawain encounters someone who disavows this worldview, proving that there is an alternative to this social structure. This encounter serves to disorientate Gawain, both physically, left for dead in the middle of a forest, but also disorientates his worldview, showing that the imposed rules of man only apply within the sheltered walls of civilization, and that if he falls for such an obvious trap, perhaps he's not knight material after all, casting doubt on the very objective of his quest. Throughout the film, there seems to be a preoccupation with the inevitability of death. This is present when Gawain is tied up by the aforementioned scavenger. The camera pans to a mirror image of him, but reduced to a skeleton, long dead and long forgotten. The very nature of Gawain's quest is tied to his death. Will his meeting with the Green Knight be his end? The encounter with the ghost of St. Winifred also regards her death. She was beheaded by an intruder, her head thrown into a nearby creek from which she asked Gawain to fulfill his knightly duties and retrieve. This intruder is revealed to be a lord, who previously tried to rape her. After she fought him off, he returned in the night, broke down the door and killed her. This not only works again to cast doubt over the code of honour that nobles are expected to live by, a code by which Gawain is very much trying to live up to, but works as a twisted mirror to his game with the Green Knight. As he edges closer to his confrontation with the Wooden Knight, Gawain becomes more aware of the death that surrounds him, both his own demise and the demise of others. Is this what drains his courage when he finally stares death in the eye, in the form of the Green Knight's axe on his neck? After all, his search for answers for the meaning of all that came before him is futile if the ending of his quest is his demise. Nothing means anything when you're dead. Although despite the endless analysis that many sections of this film cry out for, perhaps it's simpler than it appears. The Green Knight is seemingly summoned by Gawain's mother. She writes a letter during a paganistic ritual, a stark contrast to the Christian celebration happening simultaneously. As soon as this ritual is complete, the Green Knight arrives at Arthur's court carrying a similar letter with the same green seal. Is the Green Knight's game and Gawain's subsequent quest all engineered by his mother? Up until this point in his life, Gawain seems to be enjoying the comfort that nobility offers him without taking up any responsibility. His awakening in what seems to be a low-born whorehouse is not what you would expect from the king's nephew. The Green Knight's game grants Gawain an opportunity to prove himself and live up to his name. It stands to reason that his mother would want him to achieve respect among his fellow nobility. However, while this may be true, it could be argued that what changes Gawain the most is not the game itself, but his journey to the Green Chapel. Can we assume that his encounter with the scavenger or the giants are a part of his mother's witchcraft? While his mother may have lit the spark that pushes Gawain to go on his quest, it's the quest itself that proves the most impactful. He arrives at the Green Chapel and hoped to find resolutions to all the encounters he had during his quest. But the real questions posed by this film is not the game itself, but everything that happened along the way. In examining what it means to be a knight and whether Gawain can live up to this ideals, it informs his actions at the Green Chapel. If he didn't go on the journey, can we really expect him to act the same upon the film's finale? None of the numerous questions posed by this film have a concrete answer, and even if they did, can we really expect there to be a singular unifying message of the film? Writer and director David Lowery explores many themes. The film has something to say on a wide array of topics. Is Gawain's search for meaning too complex? Are abstract ideas of knighthood and valour overcomplicating Gawain's questions? When he meets the ghost of St. Winifred, he asks her whether she is real or not, to which she replies, "What does it matter? I just need my head." What does it matter if Gawain doesn't live up to these knightly virtues? He just wants to keep his head. The game played with the Green Knight is a test. Is it a test of the 5 knightly virtues, or just a test of Gawain's mettle? Does he have the courage to stare death in the eye and not flinch? Along the way, his true character in relation to these virtues may crystallise and become clearer, but ultimately the test will still be the same. How Gawain approaches this test, how he approaches his death and the inevitability of his death is what matters. Does he stare death head on and refuse to back down, or does he fail his test, live an unsatisfied life hiding behind his fake honour, only to die all the same? In many regards, the film is a coming-of-age story, where Gawain truly realises who he is, and whether or not he can live up to the knightly virtues and become an honourable noble, or whether or not any of that really matters to him. The same decrepit chapel, the Green Chapel, reclaimed by nature, sees Gawain kneel before the Green Knight, mindful of all the experiences that came before him. Gawain wonders what it all means. As the wooden figure approaches, axe in hand, Gawain kneels in anticipation of receiving the same blow he delivered to his would-be executioner a year previous. As the statue raises his axe, the sound of Gawain's heavy breath and rapid heartbeat cut through the silence. Will this be his end? Before the Green Knight can complete his blow, Gawain flinches, retreats from his kneel, unready to receive his blow. Is this all there is, he asks? He hopes to find a meaning for all that came before, but what awaits him are no answers, just a swift death. The Green Knight has no grand explanation, just the cold hard indifference of the axe upon Gawain's neck. What else ought there be? The statue replies. However, this isn't a full explanation of the film's themes and messages. I've barely touched upon what the belt means, and as extension the contrast between Christendom and paganism. What was the meaning behind Joel Edgerton's Lord? The talking fox that accompanies Gawain for much of his journey certainly adds a layer of depth to his quest, although it gives more questions than answers. If you still find yourself craving an outright answer to the grand unifying meaning of the Green Knight, director David Lowery might be able to help.
Here is a character who has a tremendous legacy laid out ahead of him. He is related to King Arthur, one of the greatest kings of medieval history. He could be the successor of the throne, but it was important for me to make sure that his journey carried him to a place where he realized that more important than that legacy was the idea of being a human being with integrity and with goodness in their heart. And that's what I wanted to convey in The Green Knight.